The Optimum Idol Pearl is a Pearl version of the Optimum Idol and is already available. Zach will be in this one and will get a little more in depth to help the more active tournament bowlers figure out where it fits and what situations it will be most useful in. Back with the monologue, but if I don't say it, you don't hear it. We are, of course, at Royal Crest Lanes in Lawrence, Kansas, bowling on the Kegel Chromium Challenge pattern. The lane graph is linked in the description if you want to take a look at the details. Make sure to also check the description for instructional videos, links, and discount codes. There's some actually good stuff down there. I'm not just trying to sell you something. You really should take a look. The Optimum Idol Pearl features the famous and popular Icon core from the Idol series, boosted by the AI outer core, which buffs the core strength. It makes it more of a heck and chonker. 247RG 056 differential, making it very similar to the core in the Summit from a numbers standpoint at least. So very strong rolling, high flaring, early controllable symmetric core. We also have the Microtrax Pearl cover from the Exotic Gem with the out-of-box Reactigloss polish, which is where he left it. It's been looking just fine now if you like factory shine. Now on paper, this should be the perfect complement to the Optimum, provided you keep them both out of box. With them being the same formula, they'll be a little too close if they're both at the same surface. It's a rounder version of the Summit Peak, or about a half step up from an original Zen to help you get an idea where it lives. Now, if you haven't seen the review I did featuring Tobias, I mentioned that for as strong of a cover as this is, it was oddly clean and weak, and while we expected it to be kind of slower, we didn't expect that clean, that weak, or that slow. As you've seen already, it's still oddly clean for Zach also. Typically, even cleaner covers are still pretty strong for him because he gets such a heavy roll on the ball, but the length with this ball is absolutely free. However, like I also mentioned, I expected the ball to do more for most other people than it did for Tobias. He's even already plugged and re-drilled it, and it still doesn't look that great, so apparently it's just not a good matchup for him. For Zach, though, he really likes it because typically cleaner covers are also pretty responsive, and this one being on the slower side gives him a ton of control over everything the ball does. He doesn't have to fight it for length, but he doesn't have to dump it or bail on it to keep it from being too sharp down lane. Now, the cover is still strong, so despite it being tamer than it usually is, it still blends the lane very well, and this is why I've always loved shiny, stronger covers so much. You get the lane blending and consistency and control without having to add surface like you would to a weaker ball, so especially on a house shot, you can use a stronger shiny ball without it transitioning the lanes too quickly. So again, Zach is basically a full-time PBA regional player. He makes every stop he can, so while we're definitely trying to shoot a ball review, it's dual purpose. He moves around and tries different things to test the ball's ability and range both for you and for him, and part of that is trying to make a ball strike from everywhere. Like I mentioned in his Ascent review, one of the outtakes at the end of this one, he says, "I'm working hard to try to make it strike from there." I won't repeat the whole spiel from that video, but he's not trying to strike to make it look good for a video. He's trying to see what he has to do from where to get the ball to perform. If he's got to throw it really hard from straight or really slow it down from deep, that's information that tells him which zones that ball is going to work the best from for him. I think obviously you can see it's not going to be a hook the whole lane ball, at least not without a significant amount more friction. He has stuff that covers boards a whole lot more naturally already, so typically he'll probably use this as a ball down from stronger sanded stuff on longer patterns when playing straight is at a premium. This one isn't going to force him inside to get the ball down the lane, but it's also not going to force him deep to keep it from jumping either. It'll have enough traction and stability to control the lane, so on medium volume patterns, he could use it on the fresh, but it's going to be much more of a couple games of transition ball and may even be a sneaky pick fading the middle on a shorter pattern because typically shorter patterns see a lot of urethane, but they also destroy the heads, and it's not fun to have to move inside on a short pattern so that the ball doesn't jump as soon as it hits the lane, but then also try to get the ball to finish through black hammer carry down. This one might be a big brain play in a situation like that. A very high 3-ball or very low 2-ball territory for Zach. It's hovering right on that line where the overall strength is higher on paper than it is on the lane, but the strong ball attributes do show themselves in certain situations or from certain angles, so it's a little difficult to place. Now, somebody asked a question about the original Optimum on Tobias's OP video and mentioned that they had to be the only person out there that didn't like the original Idol. Well, Zach didn't even get an Optimum because he didn't like the original either, so if you didn't like the Idol, you're not alone. For this video, we'll instead be comparing the OP to the Attention Star. While the Star is asymmetric, it also has a weaker cover with E-Trax Plus. Now you can see that they get similar length, but when the Star sees some friction, it really moves. Part of this is the asymmetry, creating extra torque, but part of it is that the cleaner cover is more responsive or faster on friction than the OP is. Now this really illustrates well what I said about the OP blending the lane. The star creates a more dynamic and aggressive ball reaction, but sometimes you don't need or want that, because conversely, if it doesn't have that friction, or if the lanes are spotty, meaning that there's been some transition and there are some dry spots but no real defined area of friction yet, the star can be wiggly or jumpy, while the OP is going to blend that and maintain a truer path down the lane because it's not as sensitive to either oil or friction. However, it's also slower down lane, so if the back ends are soft or slow to begin with, that can result in the OP being a little lazy or weak at the pocket. It's all a balancing act and making sure that you have the right tool for the right situation. Now the OP would also fit perfectly between the original Optimum and the new Summit Ascent, so if you're looking at both the OP and the Ascent, you could definitely purchase both and run them together. The Optimum Idol Pearl along with the Summit Ascent are both available now. Don't forget to check out the description for all the codes and links. There's some really good and helpful stuff down there. And make sure Rosedoll10 gets entered at checkout at CoolWick to knock 10% off. This video was brought to you by Panda Bear Productions. We put the in bowling. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.
Yeah, I gotta go a little more left. Oh God. That was right. Oh, that's right. I'm working hard to make it, try to strike from there.